Ethan Hale noticed her stare before he noticed anything else. Not the room, not the low hum of conversation, not even the fact that half the people in the cafe had gone unnaturally quiet. Just her eyes. They were fixed on him with a level of focus that made his spine straighten without permission. Not curiosity, not confusion, assessment. The kind used by people who were used to deciding outcomes. Ethan had been mid-sentence, explaining, badly, why the shipment delay wasn't technically his fault when his voice faltered. His words trailed off as if his brain had quietly pulled the plug. The woman across from him didn't blink. She was seated perfectly still, shoulders relaxed, posture effortless. Pale skin, almost luminous under the overhead lights. Short, light hair framed her face in a sharp, deliberate line that suggested intent rather than fashion. Her clothing was simple, fitted, functional, nothing ornamental, nothing wasted. And yet the room seemed to orient itself around her. Ethan had learned the hard way that some people carried gravity without mass. She was one of them. "I'm sorry," he said finally, clearing his throat. "Did I miss something?" Her lips parted slightly, not in surprise, never surprise, but in consideration. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, and devastatingly clear. "You stopped talking," she said. "Humans usually do that when they realize something important." A faint smile touched the corner of her mouth. Not warmth, amusement. Ethan swallowed. "Right, well, You're staring," she added. He froze. "I know I'm not," he said too quickly, then immediately hated how guilty that sounded. "I mean I was listening, I just lost my place." She tilted her head by a few degrees. The movement was subtle, but it shifted the dynamic instantly. The way a predator repositions when prey twitches. "You've been staring since I sat down," she said. 7 seconds longer than is polite, 4 seconds longer than is honest. His face burned. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "I know," she interrupted. "That's what makes it interesting." The silence stretched. Somewhere behind Ethan, someone dropped a cup. No one laughed. "Is there something on my face?" he asked, attempting humor as a defensive reflex. "No," she replied. "Your expression changed." She leaned forward slightly, not invading his space, claiming it. "You were explaining a logistics failure. You were confident, defensive." Mildly irritated. Her eyes never left his. "Then you saw me and your breathing changed." "That wasn't possible. She couldn't." "You're not offended," Ethan said, choosing the safest assumption he could find. "Are you?" Her gaze softened just a fraction. "Offended?" She repeated. "No, if I were offended you would already know." That should not have sounded like a promise. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then, why are you looking at me like that?" Her eyes flicked briefly to his hands resting on the table, to the way his fingers curled inward without him noticing, then back to his face. "Because," she said, "you didn't look at me the way most humans do." His pulse skipped. "And how is that?" "Most of them stare without realizing they're doing it," she said. "Or they realize and immediately lie. You realized, and you panicked." She sat back, studying him as if he were a problem with an elegant solution. "That tells me something about you." Ethan forced a nervous smile. "I'm not sure that's a good thing." "It rarely is," she said calmly, "at first." He laughed once, short and awkward. "For what it's worth, I wasn't staring because you're." He stopped himself just in time. She watched him carefully. "Because I'm what?" she asked. He chose honesty because everything else felt dangerous. "Because you look like someone who doesn't sit at tables like this, unless there's a reason." For the first time her expression shifted, not surprise, approval. "You're observant," she said. "That's also dangerous." Ethan frowned. "You keep saying things like that." "Yes," her voice lowered, "because you haven't asked the obvious question yet." "And what's that?" She leaned in again, close enough now that he could see the fine details in her eyes. Patterns, depth. Something that didn't quite move like a human gaze should. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Did I choose you to sit across from?" The cafe felt suddenly too small. Ethan opened his mouth. No sound came out. She smiled, this time fully, and it wasn't kind. "Good," she said. "You're starting to understand." Ethan didn't answer her question. Not because he didn't want to, but because every instinct he had was busy deciding whether silence was safer than speaking. The woman across from him seemed content to let that calculation run its course. She picked up the glass in front of her, took a slow sip, and set it down with deliberate precision. The small movement broke the tension just enough for Ethan to breathe again. "Most humans," she said casually, "fill silence with noise. Explanations, jokes, apologies." Her eyes lifted to his again. "You didn't." "I'm still deciding whether I should," Ethan replied. That earned him a quiet, genuine exhale that might have been laughter if she were the kind of person who laughed. "Prudent," she said. "Delayed responses usually indicate higher survival rates." "Survival?" Ethan echoed. "That's not alarming at all." She tilted her head, studying him anew. "You're joking now." "Reflex," he admitted. "It's how we cope." "With threat," she corrected. Ethan's shoulders tensed. "You keep implying I'm in danger." "I keep implying," she said calmly, "that you've already crossed a threshold. You simply haven't noticed yet." The words settled between them like weight. Ethan glanced around the cafe, at the low murmur of conversation slowly returning, at the barista pretending not to watch them, at the ordinary, comforting normalcy of the room. Nothing looked different, and yet everything felt misaligned. "Who are you?" he asked finally, her lips curved faintly, not amusement, anticipation. "Another good question," she said. "You're improving." That wasn't an answer. "No," she agreed. "It was a test." She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms loosely. The movement drew his attention despite himself, not in a crude way, but in the way the human brain instinctively tracked balance, posture, presence. She noticed. Of course she did. "You work logistics," she said. "Independent contractor, mid-level clearance, no political ambition, no formal military background. You accept assignments that are inconvenient but ethical." Ethan stared. "You pulled my file." "I observed your patterns," she corrected. "Your file only confirmed what I already suspected." "Which is?" "That you don't seek power," she said, "but you respond to responsibility." He let out a slow breath. "That's a strange compliment." "It's not a compliment," she replied. "It's a qualification." Ethan felt something cold slide into place behind his ribs. Qualification for what? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood. The simple act sent a subtle ripple through the space around them. Chairs shifted. Conversations paused again. Ethan rose halfway from his seat before realizing he hadn't consciously decided to. She looked down at him. "Walk with me," she said. It wasn't a request. Ethan hesitated. "I don't even know your name." "You don't need it yet." "That's not reassuring." Her gaze sharpened just slightly. "Neither is staying where you are." That did it. Ethan grabbed his jacket and followed her before his fear could organize itself into something coherent. They moved through the cafe, then into the corridor beyond, clean, modern, softly lit. The station's hum wrapped around them, familiar and strange all at once. "You're calm," he noted as they walked. "For someone who just unsettled a stranger and led him away from a public place." "I don't unsettle strangers," she said. "I reveal instability that already exists." "That's worse." "Yes." They stopped before a sealed observation room overlooking the docking ring. She pressed her palm to the panel. It opened without delay. High clearance, Ethan thought. Inside, the lights were dim. The stars beyond the viewport stretched into long, silent lines. She turned to face him fully now. "Ethan Hale," she said. The sound of his name in her voice sent an unexpected chill through him. "You didn't want power," she continued. "But you didn't avoid it either. You've declined promotions that required compromise. You've accepted blame when it protected people under you." "I just try to do my job," he said quietly. "Yes," she agreed, "and that is why you're here." She stepped closer. Ethan didn't retreat. "Your species believes destiny announces itself," she said, "with drama, with noise, with spectacle." Her eyes locked onto his. "My people know better." The space between them vanished, not physically but in consequence. "Destiny," she said softly. Begins when someone like you is noticed by someone like me. Ethan's mouth went dry. And who are you? For the first time since she sat across from him, she paused. When she answered, her voice carried something new. Truth. My name, she said, will matter once you decide whether you walk away now or accept what you've already been chosen for. The stars outside shifted, the station rotating slowly. Ethan realized with sudden clarity that this was the last moment he would be allowed ignorance. He met her gaze. Chosen for what? Her lips curved, not into a smile but into certainty. To stand beside me, she said, when I make a decision that will not allow witnesses, only participants. The door behind him slid shut, not locked, just closed, and Ethan understood the threshold she'd mentioned earlier. He had crossed it the moment he didn't look away. The door didn't lock. Ethan noticed that immediately. No hiss of sealing mechanisms, no warning tone, no subtle vibration through the floor, just a quiet, deliberate close, like a choice left intentionally reversible. That somehow made it worse. He turned slightly, just enough to confirm it, then looked back at her. She hadn't moved. She was watching him with the patience of someone who already knew how long this moment would last. You said participants, Ethan said, not witnesses. Yes, and I'm guessing participants don't get full explanations up front. Correct again. He let out a slow breath. You're either about to recruit me or remove me. Her gaze sharpened. Those are not mutually exclusive. That earned a short, disbelieving laugh from him. You have a talent for saying terrifying things very calmly. It's efficient, she replied. Emotional escalation wastes time. She walked past him then, unhurried, stopping near the viewport. The stars cast faint reflections across her face, emphasizing angles that felt too precise to be accidental. You asked who I am, she said, hands resting loosely behind her back. You asked too early. She turned. But now, she continued, you're asking the correct questions. Ethan crossed his arms, grounding himself in something physical. Then answer one of them. She studied him for a long moment. Not his face this time, but his posture, the way he held tension, the micro-adjustments in his stance, like she was mapping him. My name, she said finally, is Selene. The name landed heavier than it should have. Just Selene, he asked, for now. Figures. She allowed herself a brief, almost invisible smile. You were chosen, Selene said, because you notice when people perform certainty instead of possessing it. Ethan frowned. I'm not sure that's true. You didn't trust my confidence, she countered. You tested it. That instinct has kept you alive longer than most in your profession. She gestured toward the viewport. Do you know what you're looking at? The docking ring, Ethan said automatically. Civilian traffic lane, standard rotation. Surface facts, Selene said. Look deeper. He hesitated, then focused. The stars weren't uniform. The traffic pattern wasn't random. There was a subtle asymmetry in the movement, small delays, minute course corrections. That's not congestion, he said slowly. It's controlled hesitation. Selene's eyes flickered with something like approval. Someone's holding ships at fractional delay, Ethan continued. Not enough to trigger alarms, enough to control flow. Why? She asked. He swallowed. Because whoever's doing it wants leverage without visibility. Selene turned fully toward him now. That, she said, is why you're here. Ethan's pulse quickened. You're involved. Yes, and you want me to help. No, she corrected. I want you to stand where you cannot pretend neutrality. He stared at her. You don't know me. I know enough, Selene said. You won't betray me, you won't worship me, and you won't lie convincingly under pressure. That's not exactly reassuring. For me, she said, it's ideal. She stepped closer again. This time Ethan felt it, an invisible pressure, subtle but unmistakable, not physical force, authority, the kind that bent probability instead of muscle. Ethan Hale, Selene said softly. Do you know how many systems quietly collapse because the wrong people are present at the wrong moment? He shook his head. Too many, she continued. And do you know how many survive because One unremarkable person refuses to look away. He felt the weight of her gaze settle into him. "You're not powerful," Selene said. "Not yet. That makes you safe." "Safe for what?" She reached out, not to touch him, but to rest her fingers against the glass of the viewport beside his shoulder. "In exactly 90 seconds, she said, "a delegation will enter this station. They believe they are here to negotiate a trade correction." Her eyes met his. "They are wrong." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What's really happening?" "A decision," Selene replied. "One that will redraw influence lines across 3 sectors." "And where do I fit into that?" She leaned in just enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence, smell something faint and unfamiliar, clean, sharp, almost electric. "You will witness it," she said. "Up close." "I thought you said no witnesses." Her gaze held his, unwavering. "You won't be watching," she said. "You'll be standing next to me." The station lights dimmed slightly, barely perceptible, but enough to signal priority systems engaging. A soft chime echoed through the corridor beyond the sealed door. Selene straightened. "It's time," she said. "Last chance." Ethan's throat felt dry. "Last chance to what?" "To walk away believing your life remains small," she answered. "To go back to logistics reports and controlled delays you never question." She looked at him, not as an equal, not as a superior, but as a variable. "Or," she added, "to accept that from this moment forward, people will assume you belong at my side." The implication settled slowly and then all at once. "Who are you really?" Ethan asked again. Selene's expression didn't change, but the air did. "I am," she said, "the one who decides what happens when negotiations fail." The door slid open. Voices echoed from the corridor, measured, formal, unaware. Selene stepped forward. She didn't look back. Ethan followed, and the universe adjusted around that choice. The corridor beyond the observation room was already alive with motion. Security personnel moved with quiet precision, their steps synchronized not by command, but by anticipation. The delegation approached from the far end, 4 figures in formal attire, flanked by aides who projected confidence with the brittle edge of people who believed the rules favored them. Selene walked toward them without haste. Ethan stayed at her side. No one questioned it. That was the first truly unsettling thing. The lead delegate noticed Selene immediately. His expression shifted, calculation, recognition, and then something like alarm carefully buried beneath protocol. "Director Selene," he said, inclining his head. "We weren't informed you would be present." Selene stopped at a polite distance, close enough to be heard, far enough to command the space. "You were informed," she replied. "You simply didn't believe it mattered." Her gaze slid briefly to the others, assessing. Ethan felt it like a temperature change. She was reading more than posture, more than status indicators. She was reading intent. "And this is?" The delegate asked, nodding toward Ethan. A pause, not long, just deliberate. "This," Selene said calmly, "is Ethan Hale." She didn't explain further. She didn't have to. The delegate's eyes lingered on Ethan a fraction too long, searching for rank markers that weren't there. Finding none. Recalculating. Ethan felt it then, the shift. The subtle rewrite of assumptions. If Selene stood here and Ethan stood beside her, then Ethan mattered. In ways that had nothing to do with authority and everything to do with proximity. "We're ready to begin," Selene said, turning toward the chamber doors. "I assume your people have prepared revised figures." The delegate smiled thinly. "Of course. We're confident this discussion will remain cooperative." Selene's expression didn't change. "Confidence," she said, "is often misplaced." The doors opened. The chamber beyond was circular, designed for equality, no head of table, no elevated positions, a lie rendered in architecture. Selene took the seat opposite the delegates. She gestured once. Ethan sat. The room went very still. Across the table, one of the aides frowned. Another glanced toward Ethan again, uneasy. Selene folded her hands, posture relaxed. "Let's begin," she said. Data projections lit the air between them, shipping routes, tariffs, projected losses. The delegates spoke in turns, rehearsed, polished. Ethan listened, his instincts firing now that he understood the game. They weren't negotiating. They were stalling, waiting for something or someone. Selene let them speak. Minutes passed, then she looked at Ethan. "Tell me," she said conversationally, "what do you notice?" Every eye in the room snapped to him. Ethan's pulse spiked. This wasn't planned, or maybe it was. He inhaled slowly. "They're delaying," he said, "not because they need concessions, but because they're waiting for confirmation that their alternate route cleared inspection." Silence, one of the aides stiffened. Selene's gaze never left Ethan, and if it has. "They lose leverage," Ethan continued, voice steadier now. "And this meeting stops being about compromise and starts being about damage control." Selene turned back to the delegates. "You see," she said gently, "this is why I brought him." The lead delegate's smile cracked. "That's speculation," he said. "Your associate has no access to." Selene lifted one finger. The projections shifted. A new data stream appeared. Red indicators, delays, holds, the alternate route, blocked. The delegate went pale. Selene leaned forward slightly. "You assumed I would negotiate," she said. "What you failed to consider is that I already decided." She glanced sideways at Ethan, not seeking approval but acknowledging him. "From this point forward," Selene continued, "your consortium will accept the revised terms, or your influence in these sectors will collapse quietly and permanently." The room felt smaller. "You can't prove this was coordinated," the delegate said weakly. Selene smiled then, not kindly. "I don't need to," she said. "I only need you to understand that standing beside me now carries consequences." She rose. Ethan stood with her, heart hammering. "This meeting is over," Selene said. "You'll receive the finalized agreement within the hour." But the delegates didn't argue, they couldn't. As they filed out, one of them glanced back at Ethan, fear and curiosity tangled together. When the doors closed, Selene exhaled softly. "Well done," she said. Ethan stared at her. "You used me." "Yes." He nodded once. "You warned me." She turned to face him fully now. "And you didn't flinch." Something passed between them then, not triumph, not relief. Recognition. From outside the chamber, the station's hum resumed. Life went on, unaware that lines had shifted. Selene studied him with new intensity. "You understand now," she said, "why neutrality is no longer an option." Ethan swallowed. "Yeah," he said, "I do." Her gaze softened just enough. "Good," Selene replied, "because from this moment on, people will not ask who you are." She stepped closer. "They'll ask," she said quietly, "why you're with me." The consequences arrived faster than Ethan expected. They always did. By the time they left the chamber, word had already spread. Not through announcements or alerts, through posture, glances, the subtle recalibration of attention that happened when people realized a variable had changed. Ethan felt it in the corridor. Security officers acknowledged him now, not formally, not saluting, just a fraction of awareness they hadn't given him before, a recognition that hadn't existed an hour earlier. He didn't like it. Selene noticed. "You're tense," she said as they walked. "Your shoulders are elevated, your stride shortened." "I was just turned into a signal," Ethan replied, "without being asked." "You were asked," she said calmly. "You were told the cost." "But that doesn't mean I fully understood it." "No one ever does," Selene replied. "Understanding comes after." They entered a quieter section of the station, restricted access, fewer people. The lighting softened. The hum of systems felt closer, more intimate. Ethan stopped. Selene took 2 more steps before realizing he wasn't beside her anymore. She turned. "Yes?" she asked. "This isn't just politics," Ethan said. "That room wasn't about trade. It was about fear." Selene studied him carefully. And you used me to make them afraid," he said. "Not because of who I am, but because of where I stood." "That is how power works," Selene said. "Proximity creates meaning." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't tell me what it would feel like." For the first time since he'd met her, Selene hesitated. Not long, but enough. "What does it feel like?" she asked. Ethan searched for the words. Like my life just tilted. Like I stepped into a current I can't step out of. Like people will stop seeing me as a person and start seeing me as context. Seleni's expression changed then, not much. But something in her eyes sharpened, not with calculation but with attention. That, she said quietly, is the cost. She stepped closer. When you stand beside me, Selene continued, you become legible, interpretable, useful. That's not comforting. It's honest. Ethan exhaled slowly. You don't sound like you enjoy this. I don't, Selene replied. The answer surprised him. She turned away, moving to the viewport at the end of the corridor. The stars beyond were steady, indifferent. My position requires clarity, she said. Decisiveness, detachment. She paused. It does not require companionship. Ethan frowned. Then why me? She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was lower. Because you see the cost, she said, and you don't mistake it for glory. Ethan joined her at the viewport, careful not to crowd her. So this is the part where you tell me I can still walk away, he said. Selene looked at him. You could, she said, technically. He waited. But you won't, she added, he sighed. I hate that you're right. A corner of her mouth lifted. Not amusement, something quieter. You're not bound to me, Selene said. Not yet, but you are now visible. That cannot be undone. Ethan stared at the stars. What happens, he asked, when someone tries to use me against you? Selene's gaze darkened. They will try, she said, and you will learn why that's a mistake. That's not reassuring either. No, she agreed, but it's accurate. Silence settled between them. This one was different, heavier, more personal. You should know something, Selene said finally. I don't bring people close. Ethan looked at her. When I do, she continued, it's because distance would be more dangerous. He studied her profile, the controlled stillness, the discipline layered over something tightly held. You're not afraid of me, he said. No, Selene replied. You're afraid for me. Her eyes met his. Yes. The admission hung there, rower than anything she'd said before. Ethan felt the shift, not external, not political, internal. Then stop pretending this is just strategy, he said quietly. Because if I'm paying the cost, I deserve the truth. Selene watched him for a long moment, then she nodded once. Very well, she said. Then here is the truth. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Standing beside me will cost you safety. Simplicity, anonymity. Her gaze held his. But walking away, she added, will cost you something else entirely. Ethan swallowed. What? She didn't answer. She reached out instead, just barely, her fingers hovering near his wrist, not touching. Asking without words, Ethan didn't pull away. The station lights dimmed slightly as priority systems adjusted. Selene's voice was almost a whisper. Now you choose, she said, not whether you stay. She looked at him, but how? Ethan didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know, but because answering meant admitting something he'd been carefully avoiding since the cafe. He looked down at her hand, hovering near his wrist. The distance between them was measured in centimeters, but the decision felt immeasurable. How, he said slowly, is the only question that actually matters now, isn't it? Selene didn't move. That's why most people never realize they've already chosen, she said. They argue about if until how is decided for them. Ethan let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. You're very good at removing illusions. It's part of my function. Is it also part of who you are? He asked. That did it. Her fingers withdrew, not sharply but decisively. Selene turned away, taking 2 steps toward the viewport again, as if putting physical distance between them was the only way to regain equilibrium. You think those are separate, she said. I think you've trained yourself to believe they are, Ethan replied. The words landed harder than he intended. Selene's reflection in the glass was perfectly still, too still. You don't know what my role requires, she said quietly. I know what it costs, Ethan answered. You said it yourself. She closed her eyes, just for a second. Ethan had the distinct impression that no one ever saw that. When I was selected, Selene said, I was taught to sever attachment early, To understand that closeness creates leverage, that caring creates vulnerability. Her voice remained controlled, but something underneath it was. I learned to anticipate betrayal before trust, she continued. To end relationships before they could be used against me. Ethan didn't interrupt. So when I brought you into that room, Selene said, I told myself it was strategy, that your presence was useful. She turned back to him. But usefulness isn't why I warned you. Ethan felt his chest tighten. Then why? Because I didn't want to be the reason you lost yourself, she said. And because I didn't want to lie to you. Silence stretched between them, this time fragile, not tense. Ethan took a step closer, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. You're not a weapon, he said, and I'm not a shield. Whatever this is, it only works if it's honest. Selene studied him with an intensity that bordered on unsettling, not for what he represented, but for what he was willing to risk. Honesty, she said softly, is far more dangerous than power. Then stop protecting me from it. Another pause. Then finally Selene reached out again, this time touching his wrist. Her hand was warm, human. The contact sent a quiet jolt through Ethan's system, not fear, not thrill, recognition. If you stay, Selene said, you won't be able to unsee what you've seen today. I know you won't be able to return to being invisible. But I don't want to. Her fingers tightened slightly, not possessive, grounding. And if someone threatens you because of me, then they answer to both of us, Ethan said, not just you. That made her inhale sharply. No one had ever said that to her, not like that. Selene searched his face for hesitation, bravado, anything that would give her an excuse to step back. She found none. Then this is where it breaks, she said, or where it becomes something real. Ethan met her gaze. Let it be real. The station's internal lights shifted, cycle change, routine, irrelevant. But the moment felt like a hinge in time. Selene stepped fully into his space now. Not dominance, not strategy, choice. You stay beside me, she said, not behind, not as insulation. Beside, Ethan agreed. Her thumb brushed lightly against his wrist, a small, deliberate motion that carried more meaning than any public declaration. Then understand this, Selene said. I won't soften the world for you. I wouldn't trust you if you did. And I won't pretend caring is weakness. Good. A faint, genuine smile touched her lips, rare, unguarded. Then we proceed, she said. Ethan smiled back just as quietly, together. And for the first time since she'd noticed him staring across a cafe table, Selene allowed herself to lean into something she hadn't planned for. Connection. The threat didn't announce itself. It never did. It arrived disguised as routine, an unexpected schedule change, a delayed clearance, a meeting request routed through 3 bureaucratic layers to appear harmless. Ethan noticed it first, not because he was looking for danger, but because the pattern felt wrong. Selene, he said quietly as they walked through the transit corridor, we're being rerouted. She didn't slow her pace. I know. But you knew before I said anything. Yes, that doesn't make me feel better. It shouldn't, she replied. It means you're learning. The corridor ahead branched into a private access wing, restricted, shielded, old. The kind of place that existed because sometimes the station needed rooms that didn't officially exist. Security was present but not visible. Ethan could feel it now, the way the air changed when systems were listening. Selene stopped before a sealed door. This is where they'll try, she said calmly. They. A coalition within a coalition, Selene replied. People who don't like variables they didn't approve. Ethan's jaw tightened. And I'm the variable. But you're the leverage, Selene corrected. There's a difference. The door opened. Inside, the chamber was smaller than the negotiation hall. No audience. No projections. Just a circular table and 3 figures waiting, 2 human, 1 non-human, all wearing the kind of composure that suggested practiced authority. Director Selene, one of the humans said, standing. This is highly irregular. So am I, Selene replied, taking a seat without invitation. Ethan remained standing. That was intentional. We have concerns, the non-human delegate said. Its voice carried a faint modulation, calculated artificial calm. About your recent actions. And about my companion, Selene added. The human delegate glanced at Ethan. Yes, about him. Ethan felt the weight of their attention like pressure against his ribs. This individual lacks clearance, the delegate continued. He lacks rank. He lacks justification for proximity. Selene folded her hands. And yet here he is. That's precisely the problem. Ethan waited. Selene didn't look at him, but she didn't stop him either. So say it, Ethan said, out loud. The delegates hesitated. Selene's eyes flicked to them. He's right. Clarity saves time. The human exhaled sharply. Fine. We believe Director Selene's judgment is being compromised. Silence. By attachment, the delegate finished. And attachments can be exploited. Ethan felt Selene shift beside him, not defensively but attentively. You're here, Selene said, to suggest I remove him. Or reposition him, the non-human said, for his own safety. Ethan laughed once, short, sharp. That's generous of you, he said, threatening me while pretending it's concern. The human stiffened. You're out of line. No, Selene said calmly. He's exactly where he should be. She turned to Ethan then, fully, publicly. Tell them, she said. Ethan blinked. Tell them what? What happens if they proceed? Selene replied. In your words. Every instinct screamed that this was a test, not of loyalty, of alignment. Ethan took a breath. You're not afraid of me, he said to the delegates. You're afraid of what I represent standing next to her, because I'm not controlled. I'm not invested in your systems, and I won't play along. The non-human tilted its head, bold. No, Ethan said, honest. He turned slightly, placing himself, deliberately, half a step closer to Selene. You can't remove me without admitting you're afraid of what she's doing, he continued. And you can't threaten her directly without consequences you don't want. The room went very still. Selene watched him now, not intervening, allowing. So you'll do what people like you always do, Ethan finished. You'll try to isolate, to apply pressure quietly, to wait. He met Selene's gaze briefly. We won't. Selene stood. That ended the meeting. This discussion is concluded, she said. Any further attempts to interfere with my decisions will be treated as hostile. The human delegate opened his mouth. Selene didn't give him time. And for the record, she added, voice cool and absolute, if anything happens to Ethan Hale, I will not look for proof. She turned. Ethan followed. The door closed behind them. They didn't speak until they were moving again, fast now, purposeful. That, Ethan said finally, went about as well as it could have. Selene stopped abruptly and turned to face him. Her composure cracked, not dramatically, but enough. You stood your ground, she said. You didn't defer, you didn't seek my protection. I stood with you, Ethan replied. There's a difference. Her eyes searched his face, intense, vulnerable, unguarded. That will make you a target, she said. I already am. A long beat. Then Selene reached out, gripping his forearm harder than before. Then understand this, she said quietly. From this moment on, no one touches you without touching me. Ethan nodded. Good, he said, because I'm not going anywhere. Her grip loosened, but she didn't let go. The station settled into a new equilibrium, not visibly, not officially, but in the way people adjusted their routes when Selene and Ethan passed, in the way conversations paused, not from fear but recalibration, in the way authority stopped being questioned and started being assumed. Ethan felt it most in the quiet moments, when he was alone in a corridor and someone he didn't recognize nodded once in acknowledgement, when access panels opened without delay, when messages arrived phrased carefully, written by people who wanted something but no longer pretended they were in control. He didn't like it. Selene noticed. They stood together on the observation deck, one of the few places that hadn't been claimed by politics yet. The stars moved slowly beyond the glass, distant and unconcerned. You're thinking again, Selene said. That's usually when I get into trouble. Yes, she replied. It's one of your more consistent traits. Ethan exhaled, resting his forearms against the railing. People don't look at me the same way anymore. They shouldn't, Selene said. You're not the same. I didn't ask for this, he said. No, she agreed. You didn't. She stepped closer, not touching him, but near enough that their presence overlapped. And yet, she continued, you chose it. Ethan looked at her then, really looked, at the composure that no longer felt impenetrable, at the stillness that now included him rather than excluded the world. You ever regret it, he asked, letting someone this close? Selene didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was quiet. Every calculation I've ever made assumed solitude, she said. Efficiency, control, longevity. She turned to face him. You are not efficient, she added. You complicate everything. That doesn't sound like praise. It isn't, Selene said. It's a confession. Ethan felt something ease in his chest. I don't want to be your weakness, he said, or your liability. You aren't, Selene replied. You are my constraint. He blinked. That doesn't sound better. It is, she said simply. Constraints define shape. Without them, power becomes careless. She reached out then, this time without hesitation, and took his hand. The contact was steady, certain. You remind me that decisions affect people, Selene said, not just systems. Ethan tightened his grip slightly. And you remind me that neutrality is a luxury I don't want anymore. They stood like that for a long moment. No declarations, no promises spoken aloud, just alignment. Eventually, Selene broke the silence. There will be consequences, she said. People will test boundaries. They will wait for weakness. Let them, Ethan replied. We've already established I don't walk away well. A faint smile touched her lips. Good, she said, because neither do I. The station lights dimmed subtly as rotation shifted. Somewhere decisions were being made without them. Somewhere else plans were quietly unraveling. But here, now, there was only certainty. Selene turned toward the stars again, her hand still in his. When history reviews this period, she said, they won't mention you. Ethan frowned. That's reassuring. They'll mention a shift, Selene continued. An inflection point, a recalibration. She looked at him, and they'll wonder why I changed. Ethan met her gaze, calm and unflinching. They won't find the answer in records, he said. No, Selene agreed. They won't. She stepped closer, resting her forehead briefly against his shoulder. A small, private gesture no one else was meant to see. But I will, she said softly. Ethan closed his eyes. And for the first time since she'd noticed him staring across a cafe table, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt shared.